Today, we're celebrating our 21st podcast episode, which is super exciting. And in celebration of this milestone, I decided to share with you some of the highlights and the most valuable tips that were shared by some of the amazing guests that we've had on the show to date. Now, even if you've listened to these episodes already in the past, I'm sharing the best of the best, and they're going to be great reminders for you to help you to continue to develop your skills. My name is Lisa Hugo, and I'm obsessed with helping other people find and develop their voices so they can go out and take on the world, be seen as an authority, expert, and speak their truth with utmost confidence because they know that what they have to share will connect with their audience and make a difference. I studied performing arts and spent 20 years of my career traveling the world as a professional singer-songwriter. I teach you the secrets to speak up and be heard, overcome your fears, to build your speaking skills, and learn how you can use your skills to make a change both in your own life and the lives of others. This is your one-stop shop for all things confident speaking. This is Impact Through Voice. Now, before we dive in, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you listeners for your interest and your support in this podcast. We wouldn't be 21 episodes in if we didn't have avid listeners who enjoy the show and get value from all the tips that we share. Now, when I started this new venture, I was very new to podcasting, and I'd be lying if I told you that it wasn't daunting to get off the ground, because it really was. There's a lot more to it than just sitting in front of a mic and talking. You have to plan. You have to listen to your listeners, what they want, what they need. You have post-production, and you have to create show notes. And we also create a blog on every single episode. Thankfully, I've got a really great team behind me who can support me in all the post-production work. Now, we have gone from a few hundred downloads every week to thousands of downloads every week. So again, a huge thank you to you all. Now, I've got one big request. If you are enjoying this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. It's a lot of work, and I'm offering my valuable insights for free. So I'd really love to get your feedback, and it definitely does help also to reach more people. All right. That's it for my pitch. Now let's get on with today's episode. I'm going to start by taking you back to an episode that I did very early on with the amazing Devon Brown. I first met Devon when I was a keynote speaker at an event in London, and he was the MC at that event. I had never experienced an MC control the energy in a room like Devon can. He is really one of the best in the industry, and so it's no wonder that he is booked solid at events all around the globe. Now, at this event, I was fortunate to have him introduce me to the stage. Now, Devon hyped the audience up for my entrance. He had them on their feet with a huge applause for me coming to the stage, along with every other speaker at that event over 3 full days. Now, this meant as a speaker, the crowd was already on my side before I came out onto that stage. That helped me to feel confident and relaxed. So I asked Devon about the importance of his role as an MC and how he manages this role.
That is a great question, and probably one of the most important parts of my job that other people who MC get completely wrong. And so here's the challenge, and I'll tell it with a little story. A few years ago, I was asked to host an event, to MC an event for dentists. And dentistry is an industry I know nothing about. It's not my area of expertise. And so the night before the event, I get a stack of papers, and the event planners are like, "Hey, Devon, here are the introductions for all of the speakers." And I go and I'm looking through these papers, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. No introduction was less than 500 words. It was a bunch of medical terminology that I couldn't pronounce, nor did I understand. And this is the kicker, it was speaker focused, not audience focused. And so what happened was I had to learn to develop a methodology for introducing speakers that focused more on getting the audience excited than it did just on speaker accomplishments. Speaker accomplishments feed the speaker's ego, but what you as the speaker are going to share with the audience is what gets the audience excited. So if I focus on what gets the audience excited and then use your key points of your bio to buttress that, then they're going to be more excited for you and more eager to learn from you, which makes your job as the speaker a lot easier, right? So for you, it was great because I was already familiar with you. I had seen your YouTube videos. I had seen a lot of what you do. And as somebody who uses his voice for a living, I love what you do, and I appreciate and I understand the power of what it is that you do and what it is that you teach. So the way it looks is not Lisa Hugo is, XYZ and graduated from here and has this many degrees and has A, B, C, and D. Instead, it's how many of you in the audience understand that the more confident you are and the more effectively you can use your voice, the more success you're going to have. I do. Great. Well, if you understand that, how many of you would like to be more confident and more effective using your voice? I would. Great. Well, in that case, you are going to love this next speaker because she is the number one at this, and she's this, this, and this. And that's how I introduce people in such a way that gets the audience excited about you, which makes you more excited to go out there and share with them, if that makes sense.
While listening to Devon's voice, you can hear the ups and the downs and the dynamic changes and his energy. So I asked Devon, how did he get to this level?
A couple of ways. The first way is by just paying attention to great speakers. There are sometimes, and I'm sure you've noticed this, when you see somebody speaking on stage and you have to stop and be like, they are really captivating me. And as opposed to just being captivated by them, I step back and I'm like, why am I so captivated by you? What are you doing that's making me respond that way? Can I model that? Right? So that's the first way I've learned to do it. The second way I've learned to do it is, honestly, I kind of stumble across things on accident with audience feedback. And that's the great thing about being on stage a lot, is that you get feedback from the audience. And so I was at an event once, and this woman came up to me and she says, Devon, can I pull you aside for a second? I'm like, yes, ma'am. She says, I just got to tell you, you took us on a roller coaster. And I was like, what do you mean a roller coaster? She's like, well, sometimes you were up and sometimes you were down and you were never just at one level. And it made it really easy to want to pay attention to you. And I said, I didn't even realize I was doing that. Thank you so much. I'm going to be more conscious about that in the future. So those are two of the ways I've gotten good at that.
And lastly, I asked Devon what tips he had for you if you're keen to get started as an MC or a speaker. And here's what he had to say.
The first thing is get good at your voice. Second thing I would say is understand that if you are going to be an MC, you've got to set your ego to the side. And this was one of the hardest things to learn, because naturally when I am on stage, when any human, but I'll speak about myself, when I am on stage, I want to be like, hi, I'm on stage. I'm Devon. Here's why I'm awesome. Here's where to contact me. Here's where to hire me, right? Here's all of this extra stuff that I know, right? And even at some events, I'll know more about the topic than the person speaking about it. And my ego wants to be like, I know more than this speaker, and I cannot do that. I can't. So if you're going to be an MC, you've got to humble yourself and understand that the event comes first. And your job as the MC is to big up whoever is speaking next, even if you know more than them. Like I have an internet marketing background. I've been online for 20 years. And so when I do a lot of these internet marketing events, I'll see somebody who has 2 years of internet marketing experience speaking about something and be like, dude, you took my course 2 years ago. What? And that's okay. My job is still to be like, this person coming to the stage, woo, they are awesome, and showing that love. And then the third thing I'll say, if you're going to be an MC, is get really friendly with event planners. One of the biggest ways that I've gotten on a lot of the stages I've gotten on is because I've become friends with event planners. So event planners do a lot of events. So an event planner will have anywhere from 5 to 20 events a year, and a certain number of those events might need an MC. And so as opposed to just trying to go to event to event to event, a smarter play is to go to the person who's got 20 events and then say, hey, and get to be friends with that person. Because back in the day when I first really started doing this, probably 60% of my gigs, 60% of my gigs came from event planners who had worked with me. And I'd done such a good job, and I'd made their life so easy by not being a diva, right? Because they got to deal with divas all the time, right? Well, this speaker wants to move their slot and this, that, and the other. And my question is always, what can I do to help? What can I do to serve? What can I do to make your life easier? And now at the end of the event, they're like, all right, every time I have an event that needs an MC, I'm calling Devon first. So those are the 3 things I would say. Learn how to use your voice, understand, kick your ego to the side, put the event first, put the speakers first. And number 3, become really good friends with event planners, because they will be your key inside a number of events.
Well, that was literally my very first podcast interview, and it was packed full of value for you all to learn from. Now, if you want to listen to the entire episode, it was episode 3 of the Impact Through Voice podcast, and I'm going to put the link in the show notes. Okay, let's move on. Now, the next snippet that I want to share with you today is from my conversation with Kelly Lundberg. Now, Kelly is a personal brand stylist and a mentor based out of Dubai. You'll hear TED Talks as a theme throughout this episode because several of my guests have landed TED Talks, and Kelly is one of them. Now, TED Talks are an incredible way to elevate your brand and share a message with the world. One TED can get hundreds of thousands of views and will remain online indefinitely. So it's a powerful way to be seen and heard. I asked Kelly about how she came to get her TED Talk and how she also prepared for such an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, so it was in 2016, but I would even say 2 years before that, I wanted to do a TEDx talk, and I had no idea how the opportunity was going to come, but I always believed that you need to be prepared and ready for when that opportunity comes. So I remember when I made that as a goal, I think I put it on my vision board. It was in my desire statement. And the first thing I did was went and bought Talk Like TED by Carmen Gallo, I think it is. Yeah. And that gave me a huge insight into, what it would be like to do a TED Talk, TEDx talk. And I think the big thing about telling people your goals is that opens doors. And it was a friend of a friend who contacted me and said, we do a TEDx Jess. The theme was time, the year she was doing it. And we wondered if you'd be interested in coming along to talk about something maybe related to your career or the time in fashion and how it's evolved. And I was like, I'm up for doing a TEDx talk, but it's not going to be on fashion. I want it to be something that's super personal and it's going to have a big impact.
So what did you talk about?
So time, the title of it was The Currency of Time. Now, about maybe 6 months before that conversation, I had just finished a book called Life in Half a Second by Matthew. The surname escapes. The book changed so much for me in the space of going, how quickly life passes us by and what are the things that we actually want to achieve. And I set all these goals out and started to tick them off my list. And it was all about the time we have with people, how much time do we have left, and what do we want to do with the time that we have left? So it then became very personal. And my granny had passed away not long before that. So it had brought back into, whether that's, you calling someone that you haven't spoken to for a while or someone when you just think of them, you never know when you're going to have time or that not have that time again. So yeah, it was personal. It left, because the whole point of a TEDx or a TED is ideas worth sharing, but it's something I wanted to leave was an impact and to call the audience to do something.
Yeah.
I loved it. It actually cured my stage nervousness of notes. So I was very attached to any presentation I did. I always had notes.
You had, notes.
Yeah,
notes.
My Scottish accent. And obviously with a TEDx talk, it's 18 minutes and no notes.
Yes.
And
they're very particular about the time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think mine was 16.
Countdown timer there.
I think I was 16 minutes and 20 seconds or something like that. But I had rehearsed.
Yeah, That's what I want to know. How did you prep yourself for that moment?
So I had been asked to maybe be part of it, I think in the November or the December, and the TEDx was April. So I had a good 5 months, but I had read in Talk Like TED that you needed to, not that you needed to, but many of them practiced 100, 200 times reading it through. So I knew that my presentation had to be finished by February in order for me to spend 2 months my presentation, but my talk by the end of February. So then I could spend March practicing it. And I just every day, every morning during March, I did a run through in the morning, I did a run through in the evening. And I maybe do one at lunch. If anyone came to my house, I'd be like, can you listen to my presentation? Can you listen to my TEDx? So all my friends and family that came to it had all heard it a million times. But I do it so differently now that I think I really tried to rehearse and memorize every word by word. And I think now I'd be so much more confident to tell the story not having memorized word for word, so it would come across not like I'm remembering it, it's coming across authentically.
So that comes with experience and with time and practice and the opportunities that you have to be able to learn. You have a certain amount of stories, and these stories you can, as we're experiencing today, you can just throw them in at the drop of a hat, and they're so a part of you that you won't tell it the same way every time, but that story is part of you and your journey and your connection to what you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best part about, presenting nowadays is that people don't want data. They resonate with the stories.
Absolutely.
They resonate with the personal connection. And I think that really brings it back into the personal brand is, you are your brand. No one's ever lived like you. No one will ever live like you. No one will ever have the same experiences you. Not similar, but not exactly the same. And how you interpret them are all very different.
I couldn't agree more. Now I'm going to move on to the topic of webinars. Well, we're still talking about effective communication. And I'm talking with John Penberthy, who is the name behind one of the most prestigious marketing conferences in the UK called AdCon. Now, this is the conference that I spoke at, and also Devon Brown, who I shared earlier, was the MC for. John and I talk about the power of webinars and how, when it comes to online presenting, it's those who can communicate well, engage their listeners, and keep the energy high whilst still being authentic and real who will be the ones who are successful in the digital marketing space. Now, with more and more businesses moving to online and AI taking over from humans, the competition is fierce, and those who can communicate well will stand out. I've absolutely no doubt about that.
We actually had a conversation behind closed doors once where I was honest with you, and I said, look, some of our clients they don't have it. And what do we define as it? Well, in the form of a webinar, it's just they don't have that charisma, they don't have that way of communicating that can actually engage an audience. Because you could have the best training on webinars, you could have a done-for-you slide deck that looks beautiful and everything's great. But if you open, particularly in the intro, if you open that webinar in a way where you sound really boring, it's just dull, it's all flat, and you're not engaging them in any way, people are going to drop off. And they're not going to drop off for the right reasons. Because as you mentioned, we want people to drop off because they're disqualified, but they're dropping off now because they just don't really enjoy the presentation. So the people that haven't succeeded with it, it usually points to they just can't communicate very well.
We then went on to talk about how you might not feel confident right now to speak up in public, but it's a skill that can be learned and practiced. John even shared his own experiences of starting out on camera.
The first video that I remember recording was in my parents' house, in my bedroom, when I was still living with them. I must have been 17 at the time. I bought this little tripod for not even a phone at that point, because there was no video phones at that point. I was using something called a Kodak ZI-8. I don't know if you remember that camera. No. Really old thing with a USB thing that would flip out the bottom. And I got a tripod for it, 3 little legs, and I put it on the floor. And so I had, we all know that's a terrible angle to shoot a video from. Angle. Pete behind the camera shaking his head. I literally put it on the floor. It's coming up at
your
me.
Nose.
I've got Legos and stuff on the back of my wardrobe. I just didn't think about tidying up my room. It's dark. The lighting's awful. And I remember just being the most uncharismatic person in that video. I was promoting, get this, an anti-snoring device. that was the affiliate product that I had chosen. And I remember pressing record on the video. I just said, if you're looking to stop snoring, then just get this product, okay? Just click the link and just go over there and buy it, right? And then I went and stopped it. So that's how I started. That was where the journey...
And you made money with that?
No, I did not with that one. But to your point of it's a learned skill, it's this whole thing of if you just get started, if that was my first attempt, my second attempt has a good chance of being just slightly better. And then my third attempt has a good chance of being just slightly better. We have a mutual friend, Summer, one of my clients, and in the mastermind that you're in. She said something once that really stuck with me, and I recite it all the time. She said, if you know your first attempt is going to suck, just get it out the way as quickly as possible.
That's so good.
And I really like that.
Yeah.
So yes, it can be a learned skill for sure.
Yeah, and that's so good. So many people, they'll wait until they're perfect before they then go and do something. But when are we ever perfect?
Yes.
Never.
Yeah.
So you'll be waiting for an eternity. You've got to get started.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, speaking of waiting until you are perfect, that leads me perfectly into an interview that I had with Dave Crane. And we were talking about the little voice in our heads that keeps holding us back, and also the need to compare ourselves with others. And we also talked about the failing school systems. Take a listen.
In a survey, about 92% of people have imposter syndrome to some degree.
Me too.
Which is that fear, that little voice in your head that says you're no good, that was there probably to protect you from when you're a kid, is actually holding you back. When somebody says, don't do that, you make a fool of yourself, or put that glass down, you'll break it. When you're older, that stops you stepping up to go for a job interview, or even talking to the person you find really attractive, because that voice says they're going to make you look stupid if they're not interested. And so you end up being an underachiever throughout your entire life. And what that does is it means that you never, ever get to the point where you say, I've done all right. Because that voice says you're not allowed to say it, even if you have.
It's a lot about comparing yourself to others too, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. I think it's the way that society is set up. You think about it, especially in the speaking world. From school, we're told to shut up, sit down, and pay attention. And as soon as you put your hand up to say something, the teacher, and shouldn't be horrible about teachers, but their job was to just get it over into your head, and then you get your exams, and then you're not their problem anymore. So that nurturing you as a speaker is not normally encouraged in the classroom. And so if you say the wrong thing, everyone laughs at you, probably teacher included. So the best thing you could do is sit down and be quiet. That's a really hard way to find yourself when your entire career as a child is based on fitting in and not standing out and being the same as everybody and going through this machinery that pops out somebody who'll be an ideal banker or an ideal whatever job it is they're going for. You're going to have imposter syndrome because nobody is the same. And what they didn't realize is the things that you're really good at that aren't academic is probably what's going to drive you to where you need to be in the future anyway. But typically, for instance, the playground would drive your relationship with people, and then the school classroom would drive your academics. But they're about 50% equal importance for where you need to go. But your ability to do well on the playground had no bearing on the kind of person that they perceived you to be. But when you look at who was successful from school, so many successful people from school dropped out early.
Yeah.
And went and started a car washing business, and now they're a real estate expert or whatever it would be. And so I think school got it wrong, and that's where we first learn about who we should be, but the wrong way. And so many of us are playing catch up ever since then.
Well, changing the scene and moving on to the glitz and the glam of Dubai, I talked to Taleen Marie, who is the latest addition to the Real Housewives of Dubai, and that'll be airing on June the 2nd. I asked Taleen about how she saw her role on the show, not just as a reality TV star, but rather as an opportunity to use her influence to help others and to make a difference.
I looked at this as a major platform, right? A lot of people watch the show. A lot of women watch the show. And my message has always been empowering women, particularly after having children. You know, I went through a very tough journey to even getting pregnant. I had 3 miscarriages. Then after my first child, I had debilitating postpartum depression, and it was a lot. And the main reason I went on was because I really wanted to share my story and say that it's okay not to be okay. Yeah. You know, that's okay. And everybody has a different journey. Everybody has a different experience going through it. And I wanted to connect with women in that way. And, you know, even though the show hasn't come out yet, I've had so many women just come up to me and just say, wow, thank you. You know, this is how I'm feeling, but, you know, I'm so scared to talk about it. I feel shame for talking about it. You know, we're women. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to have children. We're supposed to be this loving wife, and this is our role. And so it's important to show the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Amazing then that you're using the platform then to
100%.
help to open up discussions about this. That's great.
I don't think I would have done the show if it was just me partying and not having a message to share, you know?
I asked Taleen, what would you say to people who struggle to use their voice? Maybe they're lacking confidence or they don't think they sound good. Many people say, I don't like the sound of my voice. And they just don't allow what they have, which is probably amazing, great ideas, great knowledge. And they don't allow these to be heard because of these insecurities and these fears.
Yeah, I mean, look, fear, it's the number one thing that just gets all of us. And we all have that voice. We all have that inner voice, that shadow that
holds us back.
That holds us back, that will take a negative experience that you went through and think that that's going to happen again, right? That narrative always wants to take over the positive one.
Yep.
It always does, right? That's human nature. I think it takes time. You have to train that voice in your head to not take over. You have to train that negative voice to not be the forefront of your brain, to be in the back. And at the end of the day, as you said, it comes down to confidence, because there are some people that have no idea what the hell they're talking about. But when they walk in and they have that presence and that confidence, people believe what they're saying.
Yeah.
And confidence will triumph.
I mentioned earlier that TED Talks would be a common theme throughout this episode, and my next guest is no exception. Sarah Brooke is the founder and the CEO of the Sparkle Foundation. This is the largest growing charity for Africa in the UAE. Now, Sarah had an incredible near-death experience that led her to devote her life's mission to help change the narrative for children in Malawi. Now, she is an incredibly inspiring person and someone definitely worth following. Early in her journey of building the Sparkle Foundation, Sarah had the opportunity to deliver a TEDx talk. Now, we talk about how influential that moment was for her, her credibility, and the growth of her charity as a result of this TEDx. I saw in 2016 you had the opportunity to do a TED Talk. Now, TED Talks or TEDx Talks, doesn't matter. They have they are a great opportunity to reach more people and have your story heard. And also TED Talks, they just live on and on and on. People will come back. You may not like it, but they're going to keep coming back and seeing that. And so how was that for you? And how did you get the opportunity first?
I think somebody heard about me here in the UAE. So as we know, the power of people here in Dubai, one person leads to another. And that's how Sparkle has been a success, from human referral, no big budgeting campaign. And I think someone said, oh, you'd be good. I went. I honestly didn't know what to expect. I was not in the world of, like, as a motivational speaker, inspirational. And they said, oh, you got 10 minutes, prepare something. I look back now, and truthfully, if I'm being completely honest, I dream about doing another TED Talk, because that one, A, I've come a long way from a speaking perspective. B, I look completely different. And just even how I carry myself. But it's a nice reminder to me of actually how far I've come. And I remember in that moment thinking, okay, I see these big TED Talks and now I'm doing one. Is this a chance for a platform to share the voice? And I think the impact from that, truthfully, was more just she's legit. Like, she's done a TED Talk. She must actually be somebody, which is an interesting dynamic, because I think people can tell me every single day that I'm inspirational and I'm amazing, but it's something inside that you need to feel. And I think as my journey's gone on, it's no longer about me as a leader, like where I get my joy, and the inspiration is watching the team, watching the children, watching the people grow from strength to strength and be the leaders that they were born to be. So,
but Sparkle wouldn't be Sparkle if there wasn't you to start it off, and if you hadn't had those experiences in the first place, maybe you might have still had that desire to put into it, but it wouldn't have been that same drive. And so your stories are really important, because that's what fuels. And what I also believe is that stories connect emotionally with people. And as much as you might say it's not about me, but that those stories and those experiences that you've lived through and you've had, that's what
draws people in and they see the real situation because of how you can tell it through your own personal experience and what you've lived through. And so people feel that and they think, I need to make a difference. I felt that knowing your story. And I said, how can I help?
What I said there, I was very genuine about. Once I heard Sarah's story and her mission and the work that she's doing, I felt compelled to want to support that and help her to make a change. Now, I'm sharing these conversations with you because I want you to understand the importance of using your voice to share your message and establish yourself and your brand. Now, if you have a product, a service, or you're on a mission, without using your voice, you will limit your ability to be seen and heard. You're going to limit your potential for success. Now, Sarah wasn't an overly confident person when it comes to public speaking at the beginning, but the more she has used her voice, the more her charity has grown. The more her charity has grown, the more opportunities she has received, and the more confident she has become. The same could happen for you too. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I'm not good enough, my message isn't important enough, I haven't had such life-changing experiences, then this next snippet from my interview with Dima Gata-Ora is going to help you.
Everybody gets coached on their gremlin, as I call it, or their inner critic, because it's a massive part of how we are interacting in the world, and often we're not conscious of it.
Would you call this a sort of imposter syndrome as well? Does it link into that too?
It's linked to it. It's not exactly the same thing, because we all have an inner critic. We all have that inner voice that sits on our shoulder telling us that you can't do that. Don't go on a podcast, Dima. Don't do this. Don't do that, right?
You're here.
You're here. No. But, and we all have it. And often people feel it's something that they need to conquer, that they need to beat that voice down. And that's going to war with yourself. That's not something that we want to do. What we want to do is, first of all, have an awareness. And often clients don't even have the awareness that the script that they're running in their head is coming from a place that's filled with fear and doubt and is holding them back. And so they have this desire to grow, to live, to make a difference in the world, to create an impact. But then also the fear that's saying, well, who are you to do that? You can't do that. Everyone's going to spot you. And I find that that's a very easy thing to coach, and I have a process that I go through with all my clients. We call it the gremlin coaching. Every one of my clients does it at some point or another. And that is often the most transformational session that we do. And often the one that clients will come back to me, often months or years later, and say, that conversation was the one that changed everything for me. Because they learn that they have this, 2, realize that it's not who they are, it's just a voice, it's like a radio that's running in the background, and they learn how to quieten it and to have a friendlier relationship with it, so it's not running the show, it's not driving their decisions. They are taking their awareness back into themselves and making their decisions from a much more intentional and expansive place.
If you're still with me, but you're still having doubts about the importance of developing your speaking skills, your communication skills, even being on camera, then my last podcast snippet with executive TV producer Reem Al-Houni will bring it all home.
So I think at the end of the day, people connect with people, right? You build relationships with people, you trust people, and therefore you work with them. So it is in your interest to start developing your own personal brand and putting yourself out there, regardless of what your role may be in an entity or a company. I know I've asked you a couple of these questions before, but any idea the percentage of people who are more likely to do business with a company if they're following the CEO on social media?
I don't know the answer to that one.
77%.
Wow, that's huge.
77%. So in my world, I'm looking at that from a facts perspective. 77% of people are more likely to do business with you if they're following you on social media, which means the content you put out there matters. Being visible matters. Second to that, Any guesses the percentage of people who say they would do business with you if they've watched the CEO on camera?
I don't know what the numbers are. Tell us.
It's slightly less. It's 63%. But I still think that's incredibly high.
It is.
So I often get CEOs who say, do I really need to be in the video? Can't we just create the content without me in it? I'm like, yes, you can do that. And yes, there's a whole trend going on right now about, the faceless Instagrammer and the faceless personality. And yes, that's a trend. However, when it comes to building trust, 63% of people are more likely to want to do business with you if they've seen you on camera. I think that's huge. So it's worth doing. And it builds trust in a way that nothing else does. I mean, if you think about it, if you need to go to the doctor, which incidentally, the medical industry is one of the top industries when it comes to relying on video content. If you're going to go to the doctor, you're going to Google, you're going to search. And when you start hearing the doctor and seeing videos of the doctor, that increases your confidence in them, and there's a higher chance that you're going to work with them. And I would say it's not just doctors, it's any industry or any professional which deals with confidential information, deals with one-to-one care. Anyone from a lawyer to an accountant to a psychologist, videos make a difference. And it's about you stepping out of your comfort zone, sharing your knowledge, and realizing that this is part of your journey, regardless of whether you're the CEO or whether you're working in an organization. It's your platform to make the most of.
All of these interviews share one underlying message: the importance of using your voice to make a difference. Make a difference either in your own career, by building your own brand or your business, or the difference in the lives of others because you've got knowledge and experience to share that others can learn from. Or you might be on a mission to be the voice that can make a change in the lives of others. Whatever your purpose in life, using your voice and speaking up is what will propel that purpose forward. Remember, if you're not visible, you are invisible. If you're happy to be invisible, well, that's fine. But I know most of you are driven individuals with a much bigger purpose. We can help shape our world, change the narrative for so many, but not if we're silent. If you're worried about what people are thinking of you or will think of you, then remember, you're only as good as the circle of people that you are surrounding yourself with. So maybe you need to change that circle if those people that you're currently sharing with are negatively influencing you or your decisions. I'm going to leave it at that for today. If you want to go back and listen to the entire episodes of each of these interview snippets that I've shared with you today, I'll put all of the links into the show notes below. Happy 21st to our Impact Through Voice podcast. It's really early days. I'm on a mission to change the world one voice at a time. I'd love to hear from you. How are you using your voice to make a difference? Please subscribe and leave us a comment. Congratulations, you've just finished another episode of Impact Through Voice. You're well on your way to making a positive impact in the world with your voice. If you want more, head on over to lisahugo.com/podcast for show notes and all the links that we mentioned in this episode. Until next time.